Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, a resource to help your ministry take the next step. Whether you're leading a team, navigating church leadership, or preparing for what's ahead, this show is designed to equip you with practical tools, real conversations, and lessons learned from those who've been there. Today, we're talking about something that shaped the identity of our church for years, student missions. I'm Evan Kunz, student minister at Brentwood Baptist, and today I'm joined by Amy Jo Girardier, who helped shape the values and rhythms of our student mission efforts, and Mac Johnson, who once led student teams and now serves as a global worker in a place we regularly send students. Let's jump in.
Well, I'm just glad to be here. This is awesome.
Country.
It's crazy because my oldest is now on a mission journey with students right now. That's crazy. So, but I served 19-ish years with student missions, or with student as a girls minister, and also did student missions, and now have transitioned into women's minister role at Brentwood Baptist. And so I've been here 23 years. I'm 23 years, I think. Oh. Yeah. So, so just kind of starting into girls ministry role, at the time, we were trying to figure out what it looked like to be a team on student ministry. So we had Jay Strother at the time, who was our head student minister, and then Aaron Bryant. Brian Coates was our intern. Karen Caldwell at the time, now Binghamer, was an intern as well. And then I was the girls minister. And we started realizing that on our team at that time, we had some specific passions. And so not just girls, not just student leadership or worship or groups, but we started seeing that missions was a passion of mine. Aaron Bryant, it was life groups. And then Jay, it was leadership and teaching. And so we kind of divided up the ministry at that time. And so I was kind of handed missions. Can you do a mission journey? Can you do whatever? And so growing up, I had a heart for the nations. I had missions education in my DNA, like growing up in Illinois, had gone on mission journeys, but had really had the benefit of having people that poured into me and taught me what it looks like to build a mission partnership, to build a journey, and then be equipped with spiritual preparation and team building and those sort of things. So I, had that built into me, and then really just kind of worked with our student ministry team to figure out what does that look like for students. So that's kind of the backstory of why I started doing student missions, and then it's just grown over the years as we saw how the Lord was leading us. So
that's amazing. I want to circle back around to values you wanted to instill in student ministry missions.
Yeah.
First, Mac, why don't you share a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you are, and your connection to the student ministry?
Yeah, so it's awesome to be with you. This is fun. We've all served together at Brentwood Baptist. I served as the student minister for groups and leadership at the Brentwood campus from 2017 to 2022 with both Evan and Amy Jo. So this is fun to get the band back together in a way. And so Grace is my wife, and we met at Brentwood, and she served as a student intern when she was at college during the summer of 2013 or 2011. Can't remember the exact date, with Evan. And they served up here at the Point in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I remember as we were going through our first year of marriage, we were praying about what does our life look like as a new married couple? What are some values that we feel we wanted to see for our family? Where was God leading us? And so we just spent some time in prayer in the middle of the pandemic, really asking what are the things that we want to feel like God is calling us to. And we prayed during 2020 and 2021. We wanted to go to an urban environment. We wanted to go to a place that was incredibly diverse, where the nations were, that had unreached people groups. And we wanted to work with students and young adults, and specifically with my training and leadership development, really pour in and cultivate leaders. And so we had no idea at the time that God was going to provide the most perfect answer for us, for Vancouver and the Point Church. And so it kind of fell right into our lap in a season of really seeking harmony in our marriage. And God was so gracious to bless us in that way. And so we moved up here in April of 2022. And I've just crossed the 3-year mark, which is pretty insane to think about how quick time has gone and what we've seen the Lord do. But Grace and I are both Brentwood global workers. And so it is like a point of great pride to be sent from Brentwood because of how they care for their global workers and how they love on people that are wanting to go to the nations. And just as importantly, how to equip the church in Nashville and in Middle Tennessee to be able to see through the lens of God's great global world that they can be a part of it. That is, they're called to certain vocations and certain things, really going even deeper to that, seeing how they're called to the Lord. And when you're called to the Lord, you almost have open hands, asking God, where do you want us? Where do you want us to go? Give him the blank check, as Grace often says. And so we feel like we're trying to be obedient here in Vancouver, keeping open hands. That's what he has for us, and we could go on for story after story, but this message of student missions, or this conversation, is so important because we all three believe that God can do crazy things in the life of a 12 to 18-year-old that can set the trajectory for their life. And so I'm excited to be able to have this conversation and talk about the importance, because when you mobilize students, you mobilize the church. And I truly believe that. So grateful to be here, and excited to be part of this conversation.
You know, it's so exciting. As somebody who grew up at this church and went through the student ministry while you were still working in the student ministry, I got to be on mission journeys and be a part of that. And so, Mac, even hearing you talk about open hands and blank check and all those things, and Grace too, going through the student ministry, like a lot of that came from Grace and I's experience growing up in the student ministry and being a part of mission journeys. And a lot of that, the values and those images and all that, came from you, Amy Jo, over the years and what you instilled. So talk to us a little bit about what are the values that you kind of set out intentionally to say, I want to make sure this is a part of our culture as missions and students.
Yeah, I would be the first one to say that was learned from me, from some other people that poured into me as a student too. So I think it's really important that as we were prayerfully saying, how do we not just do, I don't want to be a travel agent for students. You know, that was one of the things, is I don't want to just do trips. And so missions is not just trips, right? So we just began prayerfully figuring out, what does it look like to create a framework? And so the first place that we started was Acts 1:8. And we took Acts 1:8 and we prayerfully figured out, like, how can we contextualize this for students? So we made it real simple, and we just said, we are sent here, there, and everywhere. And we wanted them to have a global understanding that it's not just going across the ocean. It's not just staying here. It needs to look local, national, and international. So that was where we first started. And then we moved from that. We started saying, how do we bring in missions education? How do we help understand and shape the theology of missions and equip them? And so I was looking up a whole bunch of things. So this was actually, I don't know if anybody can see this. This was in 2008. So we had a framework of here, there, and everywhere. And so these were our catalysts. What are you laughing at?
That's so good. No, this is so good.
So it was like two different. So back then it was, we had our Here partnership, which was with Reconstruct, which has now morphed into Mission 615. And then we had our There partnership, which was our national partnership with a church in Chicago. And then our Everywhere at the time was Guatemala, which after Guatemala was Vancouver, the Point Church, which was pretty cool and pivotal as we moved from Guatemala. So it's really fun to see how the Lord moved us into understanding how to put together this framework. So it wasn't just like, boom, here it is. But we moved from here, there, and everywhere. And then we tacked on some key strategies for that, and we called it the MAP, the Missions Awareness Plan. And so we talked about, how do we help develop missions awareness within our students. And so we talked about it's praying. How do you begin to help them know? You as a student never got to go to England, but you did.
It's still a tragedy in my life. I'm still mad about it.
But you hopefully were praying. I mean, that was part of it. You were praying to so sorry. But we wanted students to understand that sometimes you're praying for what God is already doing there. Sometimes you get to join Him in the work there. What does that look like? So praying, knowing that is recognizing your story in the missions journey. that God is the one who created missions, that it's not us. And so helping them understand missiology is huge, and helping them understand that knowing who has already gone before them, what is God already doing, and then how do you join in. So that's mission stories. That's helping them to know the work that's going on, and just a missiology. And then giving, we wanted them to understand what does that look like for them to give of their time, but also of their resources. And then going, obviously. And that's the part that I felt like was the easiest, is helping our students know that. So anyway, I looked at a early map. This was like our early map. And so these were some of the things that we said. Why is it important for student ministry to be aware of missions? We talked about these paradoxes, I guess. We want them to move from an I-centered way of living. So Christ-centered versus self-centered. I thought that was huge. These were some of the things that we were praying through. It's important for our students to be equipped to live out a thy kingdom come versus my kingdom go. Like we wanted them to give versus gain. We wanted them to understand thy kingdom come, my kingdom go, kind of our heart set. And then purpose living, I loved this, versus pointless living. That's pretty huge. And then, so those were some of the key things that we felt like missions awareness would do within them, and praying for that. And then out of that, we built in some training and missions education along the way that seemed pretty huge when we put them onto the mission trips, but we saw the Lord do some amazing things in and through it. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
Big picture, yeah.
Big picture.
I mean, growing up here and being in Williamson County and our area, like it's very much, we all know, and students talk about this often, it's a bubble.
Yeah.
And so you grow up very insulated, and you're not far from Metro Nashville. You're not far from refugees, from, I think last I saw was 120 languages spoken in Nashville. Yeah. And like there's tons of need and there's tons of opportunity, but down here you're kind of insulated from that. And so I think, for me growing up, getting to go to Chicago, which will be going for our 22nd year this year to Chicago with that partnership, and getting to go to Guatemala, getting to do these journeys. Not only, yes, it was an exposure for the first time to other cultures and to other ways of living and all that, which obviously is always very formative. Yeah. But I think one of the things that I knew on that side of things, and I know really now as I'm having to plan these trips and do all that, was one of the things you did, Amy Jo, that I loved was like I learned about redlining, getting ready for a Chicago trip. We did a poverty simulator 1 year for training, and like I learned, I will never forget having to go through with like, you have this much money and you have this big of a family, and like how are you going to make ends meet? And to actually go through things and learn them, not just in a way that was cognitive knowledge, but to actually experience a lot of that. Yeah. That totally shaped how I approached life moving forward. And that sounds dramatic, but it really did change how I look, not just at going on a mission journey somewhere else, but how do I live here? What does it look like? But then the other piece too was you guys really, really instilled in us through the way that you organize the trips, and I know we'll talk more about that, an open posture to God. And I heard you say so many times, we're going to partner with God where he's already at work, which I know that's a line that's been out there for a long time. And, but that culture and that mindset really bled into, I know me and my friends growing up, and that really is just how we approach life now, where every day we're walking around going
wherever you go, right?
That's wherever I am. If I'm at a restaurant, here, I'm looking around going, or you had I think it was a hairdresser for a long time that you were sharing the gospel with. And I think about that every time I go to get my haircut now. So I'm like, okay, where's God at work already in this place?
That's awesome. Yeah.
So those rhythms, I can testify truly, those things work and they make a difference in a student's life. And so those values have really bled down into our student ministry and formed a strong culture. Which obviously, Mac, you were a big part of that culture once you came on the team, and now serving at a church where that was one of our partners. We were going to Vancouver on mission journeys, and now you're there actually running it and leading it. So as somebody who's leading teams, and you are somebody who's obviously soaked in the culture here, and you've soaked in the values and the missions emphasis that we have, what does it look like to not just help students go as you're thinking about receiving teams and sending teams, but what does it look like to help them be formed spiritually on those trips as well?
That's good. I think just what Amy Jo was sharing with her strategies, like that is like informed me and Grace in our ministry here of just like having those really intentional markers and metrics for a student when they come on mission. Because you're right, we either want to keep them busy on a mission trip, which doesn't serve a purpose. It's more of just like we're just creating activities for them, or we almost want to shock them to death because they're in a new place. And I think you have to meet somewhere in the middle. And so we often talk about gently bursting their bubble or popping their bubble when we bring people cross-culturally, because again, like you are in a new space. When we talk about going to the nations, like anytime you're out of your comfort zone, there's going to be things that the culture shock. And even here in Vancouver, there's this near cultural shock where the people look like you, they sound like you, but the values are totally different. And so helping see like this is part of God's great world. This is people that are created in the image of God, but there's a huge need for people to know who Jesus is. Vancouver's less than 3% Christian. And so, which is crazy to me to think about, we're 60 miles from the border. And so when students come up here, we want to make sure that like they're coming here knowing that one of the things we first say is like, you and this team are the only, you have this identity as a team that no one else has. And so helping them see like this is a team that we're going to be able to look back at our life and see like this is a pivotal moment where God provided the resources and the ability and the place to be able to journey together. And then when you realize the uniqueness of that season, also going through like, why has God come? Why has God brought you here? And so like going through goals, I think one of the things we did with your team last summer, Evan, is we said, hey, what is a goal? What is something that you wanted to see happen? You know, what is God working and what is God saying to you in your life? And then we group them up according to kind of the common philosophical vision for their trip. And then that created prayer partners for them throughout the week to say, hey, like we both have a very similar goal of why we think God's brought us here. And then when you're walking through that and you're in an attitude of prayer, your entire mission journey experience, then you're able to kind of see, wow, I'm not alone. God is speaking through others, and I get to be a part of something that, while may be uncomfortable, it's also stretching me for God's great work. I often talk about for students when you're exercising and working out, like strain's good. Like working in God's field is good because it's building missional muscles. And when you build missional muscles, then you're able to kind of see, oh wow, then we're able to run the race. Right, like that Paul talks about, or the writer of Hebrews talks about in Hebrews 12. And so the spiritual formation, it happens through prayer. It happens through seeing that this is much bigger than just being active or being shocked. This is actually like seeing the world with a new lens, seeing it in color, as Grace often says here. And then when you journey together, we have interns that are with us, summer team this summer, that it was a student mission trip where they went on a week. And I think so many times we dilute, the value of a short-term mission journey, when in reality, it changes the trajectory of one's life. We have students here serving with us the whole summer. Their lives were impacted because they went into an intentional missional experience with open hands, open eyes, saying, God, whatever it is you have for me, I'm willing to receive it. And I'm willing to even alter my life because of how you speak to me in this new and fresh way. And so those are the kind of things that, again, we're just not going, but while we're here, we're asking God to form in us something new. And it's dear to us. It's unique to us. It's personal to us.
So good. Yeah, I often think about 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, that we have that in Scripture. That was most likely a 3-week short-term mission journey. And think of the impact on the gospel being preached to a group of people that were pagan, and then they were formed by the gospel, and it rang out. It says in 1 Thessalonians, it rang out into other areas and transformed many more people. So short-term mission journeys are great and are important for sure. So, yeah.
Well, 100%. And honestly, the last pastor at the Point, Victor, one of the things he taught us while we were out there, we talked a lot about, it's obviously a pretty transitional church because it's on a university campus. And so there's this constant turnover of people who are there. And one of the things Victor always talked with us about There's an approach to that where you go, okay, we're going to lose these people. So like, is it really worth the investment? And I think short-term mission journeys can be seen very similarly where you go,
Yeah.
short, like, is it
Right.
really worth all this investment? One of the things Victor talked a lot about was, yeah, but we're sending these people out all over the world. Once they leave here, they go back home.
right.
And we had a girl from Japan who ended up accepting Christ while we were there one summer. She moves back home. Another girl with the exact same name shows up at the point the next year. She accepts Christ, moves back home. Turns out they're from the same place. And they open a church on their university campus back in Japan.
That's amazing.
All because they encountered
Right,
the
right.
plane. And, we just think about with students, they may not be going internationally when they leave, but all of them are going to graduate. They're going to move on to the next phase of their life, and they're going to be sent. And so these short-term mission journeys are an opportunity to really train them as they're being sent out all over the place. It's a mission sending opportunity for us down the road if we're thinking that way. It's so good. Well, thinking about, okay, we're talking about sending people and missions. What do you think we can talk about our church, or we can just talk about the church in general? What do we get right about sending students? And what are some things that maybe are common misconceptions or things we get wrong when it comes to sending students? What do you think we get right, and some of the things that we need to work on as a church?
It's a great question. I can speak on some course adjustments that we've made through the years. I know in particular, Vancouver was a course correction for us. I think we were forming our map, so to speak, and the places that we were taking students were places where you saw physical poverty. So we were in Chicago, we were in Guatemala, and I remember right after the Guatemala partnership ended, one of our students who is now a church planter in another state that we work with, which is really crazy to think of. I'm going to go take a family mission journey to partner with that family. But early on, she was not asking a bad question. She just simply said, hey, where's the next third world country that we're going to partner with?
Yeah.
And that was a wake-up call for me, because I thought, I don't think that's what we should be doing, And so we began praying, all right, well, where is our next partnership going to be? And we worked with as we always do, work with the missions team here as we're trying to figure out where we go next, and we're praying. And the missions minister at the time said, what about Canada? I remember going,
Sorry.
Canada, eh? Wow, great. Yeah. So
Somebody should go.
we should. I just didn't feel called myself.
That's right.
But anyway, the Lord was leading us there. We took a site visit link, and myself and one of the missions ministers at the time, and we went in 2010, and it was right as the Olympics were coming to Canada. And I remember standing in the university with the Point Church pastor at the time, Victor, and he said, this is where God called me. And he began to talk about spiritual poverty. And I don't know that I'd heard that term before.
Yeah.
And it changed and course corrected in me. Wow, we are showing students what poverty looks like, but we really need to be showing them what spiritual poverty looks like wherever they are. And so that was a course correct for us. So for me in particular, and we went back and then through that partnership, the Point Church began to instill in me even. I knew the power of prayer, and we had it built into our map, but hearing the story of how we heard about a man before, when the Point Church was only like 4 people, we heard about a man who walked up Burnaby Mountain every Saturday praying for 10 years for a church to be planted there. And I was just thinking of just the culture of prayer, and then, and I still think the Point Church, that's in your DNA, of just how you prayer walk and praying on site with insight. And so those sort of things got course corrected within our map of what we were doing as we were sending students. So that's what I think we needed to course correct. So
Yeah. What's funny is I was on the other side of you experiencing that transformation where you ended Guatemala and you said we're going to Canada. I was in high school. I was like,
You felt
why?
the same thing.
Why would we go? We need to go somewhere people actually need it. And then, of course, I ended up serving
hilarious.
there later in my life.
Yeah.
And it was learning about spiritual poverty and physical poverty.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we were learning it at the same time at different stages.
Different reception levels,
right,
too.
that's right.
Yeah. Mac, anything you'd add about what we get right and course corrects we need to make?
Yeah, I think so many times it's all about the approach, right? I think one of the things that I loved and what I still implement just in training, I learned a lot from Amy Jo and how she trained teams missionally, is like there's no starter kit that you can just copy and paste when you go and serve cross-culturally. And I think the church sometimes either they don't approach, going missionally with that same type of intentionality, or it's a timing thing of just like we're just trying to continue. And so learning how do you prioritize like the actual experience to see like we're going to actually go into this not like needing a schedule or not needing just to do the same things that we've done in other places. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that I've heard at Brentwood share all the time, and I used at our church today, is like exegete the culture. It's exegete the city, right? Yeah. This idea of like, man, if you don't have someone that leads a trip with students that has gone before that can at least give a vision of like how the city operates, what are the like key values, what are the things that they're going to experience, it's going to be really hard. And so like even prioritize like not just getting a mission journey off the ground to just check a box, but to actually like take your time, like send a vision team, go and pray over the city, understand a little bit, work with the team, like understand the ones that you're serving with. Like I love when new prospective churches come up here that want to partner with the point and they're saying, we don't want to send a team for a couple more years. We just want to learn before we do that. And I love that. Because like it's not something to where they're just like, hey, we're going to come in 9 months. What do you have for us? Yeah. It's like, no, we're going to actually like, we care because like partnership is too valuable. Like churches in Canada, y'all, like, this, y'all served up here. Like they're existing. They're trying to survive. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing. And like partnerships like this one to where we receive, short-term teams, it not only gives us wind in our sails, it expands our reach, but you can only really be effective, serving with partnerships and partner teams and churches if you're actually coming into it with that intentionality. And so I really appreciate like the fact that like you are having like, Evan, you're bringing a group here in a couple of weeks that's very different from the group that you brought last summer. So I'm not going to give you the same experience that I did last summer because it's not the team that was last year, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that we end up doing come from the first day together of like hearing the goals and hearing and talking with you in the training moments of like, here's what the students that are going through, here's what they're going through. And I just think like that intentionality is so key because then when students have an idea of where they're going and they're coming, not having all these like preset expectations and just like, we're just going to tick these boxes, they're then able to come and see the people that they're serving with brand new eyes. And it encourages my people, like the church that I'm a part of, like, you don't understand, like when students that are on fire for Jesus come and serve here, because it's not the norm here. We don't have the Christian culture in Vancouver that I grew up and that I worked with in Nashville. Like for my students that are in university, even to see high schoolers that love the Lord and that know the things of God and care about theology, when they see that, it spurs them on. Right. But it all has to come from this holistic approach of just like, we are going to come into this, not just putting in what we've done before, but we're really going to care that we're going to a place that God has called us to do and whatever He has for us. We're going to take a step of faith to receive that with open arms.
It's so good.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that I love most about how we've done things over the years. And I'm hearing you both talk about it. And I know that I would say this too. There's this kind of two ends of the spectrum that we're holding in tension where we're like, we want to be incredibly intentional about everything we're doing. Like we think through every single minute. Yeah. Literally, if people saw our schedules, they are literally minute by minute of like everything that's happening for the entire week. Yeah. And so we're thinking through every single moment and how will this flow to this and how will this connect there and how will this do that? But on the other end of the spectrum, we always teach our students that they need to be Elbic self, right? Flexible backwards.
That's right.
But part of that is because we want to be incredibly intentional, but we also want to be super open to what God is doing when we get there. And so we always tell our students, hey, when we arrive, something will change. Something's going to shift because God's going to move in a way we didn't expect. And we need to be ready to do that in those moments.
Yeah.
And so holding that tension is one of the key parts. I think that's gone well over the years. It's one of the reasons our partnerships have lasted as long as they have, is because we're able to come in and go, hey, we got a plan, but also what do you need? How can we work with you and how can we serve you guys best? And then we'll adjust.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen however we have to.
Yeah.
So I think it's beautiful. So switching gears and thinking a little bit about partnership, that is one of the things we talk a lot about. I mean, I already mentioned it, 22 years we've been going to serve. And really before that, before Reborn was actually a church, but for 22 years, we've been going to Chicago. We've been going to Vancouver for a long time. We've been doing 615 for a long time. That's pretty rare out there that a church has a long-term partnerships through its student ministry. So Amy Jo, talk a little bit about the value of partnership and how it became foundational to our student ministry over the years.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go back to when I was a student or when I was a college student. I benefited from having, spiritual mothers and fathers that were leading out and putting on display what it looked like. And so I, participated in one in particular was a mission journey to Kazakhstan. And our whole state had a partnership with Kazakhstan. Wow. And so I took notes. I was inspired by how it wasn't just Illinois is going to Kazakhstan. We made sure with a partnership, and I was told by leaders, it's not a partnership if you're just going to them.
Yeah.
It has to be a partnership as you're learning from them and you're looking and praying as sisters and brothers in Christ. And so you are partnering together. So that shared understanding. So that was in me. I was thinking, one, and this was foundational, that I felt like we needed to partner with churches. I think there are different parachurch organizations that are great, but we felt like that this was something we wanted our students to be able to do, is to partner with churches. Wherever they go, there's probably going to be a church or they're going to need to plant one. So let's show them what it looks like to partner with a church. And then the other thing was beginning to figure out, how do we share? So like with the Point Church, where we were trying to figure out what can we learn from the Point Church? How can we help each other? So we've done different things with the Point Church through the years. Them helping us, learning about prayer. I think that was a huge thing that they shared with us. And equipping us and learning how to look for somebody who has favor, right? Like we were always looking for somebody that we could partner with. And people of peace, And so we had opening up the eyes of our heart for that, for what did that look like? I think that was something that was shared from the Point Church. With Chicago, they taught us so much about how to work with people in trauma and people in crisis, and how they were so happy as they were, or I don't know how to say it, they leaned on God in a different way, but they really equipped us as we were partnering with them. I didn't know how to do that, right? But we've learned and walked with Reborn, and so but we prayed through that. I mean, with Reborn, it was kind of like dating, honestly. We were like, we want to come. Our students were like, we're called here, and Reborn's like, yeah, not so fast. And so it was a slow process because they didn't trust. A lot of churches were like, we want to come in and check this off of our box. And we were like, we're different. Yeah. And they were like,
are you?
Prove it, right? And so we did. We proved it with consistency. We proved it with showing up in not just 1 week out of the year, but checking in with them. And they became like family, right? And we proved it with resources, time and money. And that was a big way that we were able to say, we're here for you and we're not leaving. So I think that was key in partnerships. So
yeah, and we're still continuing that on, which is so cool.
I mean, that.
You think about it, even if we just look at the Reborn partnership over the years, this is a place that started meeting at school, and then moved buildings into that corner lot that I think is a barbershop now, or was a barbershop. I can't remember. And then they moved across the street to a firehouse, and then we started helping them renovate it, and then they finished the renovation in a couple years.
Crazy.
And when you think about each of those kind of eras and phases of our partnership with them, we did different things in each of those eras.
Yeah.
We approached it, you kept up with them, and we're asking, how's it going? What do you need?
Yeah.
And so I don't know many groups that, when a church says, hey, we're renovating a firehouse, could you come in and tear out the roof and the ceiling and like bust down walls?
Right. So we're like, who can we bring along? Right.
Yes.
And the Lord brought on a team of men and some of our women that went and knew how to do that. But yeah, it's looking for, okay, God, who have you brought to our church? Who have you brought on this partnership that for such a time as this, that is supposed to renovate this partnership, right? So
literally. Yeah. That's good. Matt, kind of thinking from your side then too, you are one of those partners now. You're on the other end of this, and you've been on our side keeping up with a church, but what does it look like? How has that been valuable to you to have a partnership? And I love AJ mentioned this word consistency. How has consistency been a key part for you of these partnerships?
Yeah, I think it's important. And I think so many times when we think about partnership, like, again, what the point our church has been so strident in is this partnership in prayer. Like, I think not devaluing it, but actually like saying like, no, it's not that we're not compromising here. It's actually like you bless us. Yeah. When you come on this experience and you see things, and Grace oftentimes shares with teams is like, when you leave here, you cannot unsee what you have seen. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways to be able to partner is to pray about what it is you've experienced and then take that to your life, right? And so we're not just trying to put you to work here. Like, that's not the goal. The goal here is like, no, for you to like see now you have skin in the game here. Yeah. Because you've come. And now, like, God is asking you in obedience, how is this experience? How is this going to be? So for even students, like raising the level of like commitment to them and just being like, hey, like maybe for you, like partnership looks like you pray. And that is awesome. Like, I think that is what we all are called to do once we come. But I pray every single team that comes and partners with us is like that there's one person that comes and serves on a more long-term basis. And guys, every single team that we've had, students included, we've had someone come and serve at least a summer, if not longer, with us. And so like, that's the partnership of just like, as you're praying through this, like, see that like you may come back here. Or my prayer is like you go somewhere else. Maybe it's someone that you meet. The uniqueness of Vancouver, like we've talked about, you got people from all over the world here. Maybe God like put some people group, some nation on your heart when you first came into the trip, that like now you consider what would it look like to go serve with them short term, or maybe go serve as a journeyman, or maybe even think about long-term partnership with the many different missions organizations. But I love what William Carey says, and I think this is partnership, and this was brought again. All this wisdom is coming from my wife, which y'all Grace, like this is not a surprise to you, but I'm such a beneficiary of her just wisdom from the Lord. William Carey talks about when he was serving in India, that what the local church is for those that are serving cross-culturally into the nations is the local church are rope holders. Mm-hmm. And he says, I will go down if you hold the rope. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what we see for students is like, hey, like we're here and it's people are in need of Christ. And people you will meet have never heard of Jesus. And like, this is part of like going into the darkness. Like, and we're trying to take light with us, as Matthew 5 talks about it. We're literally a church on a hill in a dark city. We're a city on a hill. And so, but we need you to hold the rope. And my prayer is like, as people are holding the rope, they are then inspired to say, okay, it's my turn. Yeah. And Brentwood, by being consistent and churches like are saying, we're going to continue to hold the rope. And we're going to continue to bless and commission, and we're going to continue to send in ways. And so, like, again, I don't think students quite they're learning, but I think we've almost sold them short to think like this could be you. Yeah. But we have to paint that vision for them. And so, partnership are rope holders. Partnership are those that are saying, you know what, I'm with you. I'm going to pray. I'm going to consider, and I'm going to actually call upon. Those are the 3 C's we talk about for partnership: is that we're going to consider, we're going to commit, and we're going to call upon the Lord and ask that He does something and reminds us of what we have seen, that we will take with us the rest of our life.
I love that. I love that, because this generation too, Gen Alpha, Gen Z is kind of moving on out, but they similarly are wanting this too. But they are hardwired, I believe, in such a way to want to be inspired. And so they're looking for co-pilot experiences. So they want to, like test it out, like they're not the head pilot, right? But on a mission journey, they get to experience some co-piloting situations, and they get inspired by people like Mac, by Grace, by Evan, and they get to say, like, what does that look like? What does that look like for them? And then at the same time, they're considering, what does it look like for me? And so my student is on a mission trip right now, a mission journey locally. And that's one of the questions that I asked him is begin to do some inspiration interviews, right? Like begin to look at the people that God has already called, and what does it look like to ask them, how did God do that? How did God get you here doing what you're doing now? And I think that those are some key questions for students that awaken and help them to consider, what does it look like to serve, not just hold the ropes cross-culturally, but then what does it look like every day, like you were talking about, to serve where they are. So that's just a powerful thing to consider. We were praying on our vacation for people. We put a little prayer box on our hotel room. We're just trying it out. I was trying it out and inviting the family, and they thought I was a little loony, They were like, what are we doing? And we got so excited when people started putting prayer requests in. Yeah. And we started praying for people down our hallway or up a couple of floors, and they would put their room number, and they shared. And it was one way. And one of my sons was like, so we do this even on vacation. And I was like, yeah, all the time, right? And so I think that that's just something that missions begins to awaken within us, is that we know that we're called to go. We're called to do that wherever we are. So
that's right. And I totally agree. Like, that's one of the coolest things about one of the teams we just had in March, is one of the things that we do every single time. There is one thing that's pretty consistent, is we prayer walk Brentwood Mountain, where our church is located. Yes. And one of this church, they came to me at the end of this and were like, with the pastor right beside me, they're like, why don't we do this? I'm just like, this is part of it, right? Like, you should be able to look at your key points. And this church is actually in a neighborhood. And so the translation's a bit easier. Like, know who the key people, like, who are the people we're praying for? Yeah. How are we going, and doing this consistently? Like, how are we prayer walking our neighborhood? How are we even teaching our people, like yourself, Amy Jo? Always been inspired by you, Daryl, and your kids, about how you live this prayer life of prayer with this prayer mailbox. Like, I think just that is like so key, because that we know what prayer is, that ignition. It's that flame. Like, people talk about the missional flame. Well, it starts for prayer. Yeah. Like, if you give that to students, like, it's really easy and it's really like applicable. And then and I believe they'll pro up their schools. Like, that's my prayer from this team in a couple of weeks. Evan, is like that group of juniors and seniors, many of whom are maybe going to a college campus or going to into their final year of high school, like what they are able to see just from a simple prayer walking and the way that we've attached scripture to each of those places, seeing how God's word is applicable in every life stage and everything that happens, is that they're able to then go and translate that, and then to be able to do that in their own community. So, Amy Jo, that's awesome. I just wanted to reinforce, like, that's such a key point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love, Mac, last year in our training, one of the things working with Gen Zers, especially since 2020 and just that whole experience, is honestly, and we probably all experience this, they have a harder time holding a conversation just in normal interactions,
Yeah.
And a lot of our mission journeys, we're pretty intentional to make sure we have a balance of, like, we're going to do some physical stuff maybe, but we're also going to do some relational stuff. So you got to be able to talk with people. And especially in Vancouver, it's a lot of the work. So last year, as we were coming into training, I was thinking about it and thought, well, I don't know that they know how to talk to a stranger.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that they know how to ask questions. So we did speed friending as
Yes.
part of our training,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And my challenge then was, hey, we're going to give you a topic. Each time it got longer, but you have to ask at least 3 follow-up questions and keep the conversation going for the full length of time.
That's amazing.
And so they're practicing this, and we talked a little bit about like, hey, when you're in gospel conversations, this is going to be a lot of what it is. People there either don't know Christ, or what they do know, they don't love about him. So like, you're going to have to figure out, how do I navigate a conversation and try to work in talking about
Yes.
Christ? And we got to the end training and went great, and we got to Vancouver. Mac, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were up there with you, we started talking about sharing the gospel. That was every kid's prayer, pretty much, was like, I want to share the gospel this week. And every kid on the team got to that week. It was crazy. But one of the things they said, as we got to the end, they were like, hey, why didn't we like practice sharing the gospel and training? and in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to make that more obvious next year. Like, really point this out to them. Like, this is what we were doing. And I kind of said, I was like, well, we practice conversations. I don't know if you remember that. And they were all like, yeah, I don't know. And we got to the end. We had been to a temple, and we had gone in and told them, hey, we're here to learn. Don't anticipate that you'll share the gospel explicitly with anybody here. We're just here to ask questions and learn about them. And then we're there, and they start asking us questions, and we start asking them questions. And literally every kid in the room is with a different person sharing the gospel in some way.
That's amazing.
And we get back that night, I'll never forget, one of the kids looks at me and goes, it was wild. I was sharing the gospel, but it was just by asking questions the whole time. It's like, that's why we did this.
You know who did that a lot? Jesus.
That's right.
So good.
And that's one of the things. I mean, you guys are talking about prayer, and then we're talking about how to have conversations. Like, they came home, and a lot of these students, that's something that stuck with them as they came back. They're looking around, they're going, oh, I can learn how to ask questions to people at my school.
That's right.
We can learn how to pray better at our schools. How do I apply this at home?
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about mission journeys, and you're thinking about, okay, I really want this, I don't want to just go. I want this to stick. I want this to go home and change something for these students. What do you guys think it is that makes a mission journey stick in a kid's life? What really latches into them and helps them come home different? What are some of the key things you've learned?
I would say some of the, obviously, prayer. And so how do we, I know within our trainings, we began to build in missiology. You guys talked about the cultural exegesis. We want to do that. But spiritual prep at the beginning, and then at the end, and obviously in the middle of it. You know, as they're walking through, they're having a daily devotional. Some of students are not doing that. So these are great opportunities to insert those habits. But they're praying beforehand, right? They're going through the mission trip training, hopefully. Their hearts are being, open and prepared. Then they're serving, and they're processing as they're doing that. But I think a key moment is, we call it the collision, right? As they leave from the mission journey and they're colliding with going back home. There's a key moment there of just preparing them. We're not on journey now. We're looking back to where God is taking us back to, and preparing them for that. And then I also think preparing the home to receive them. So you don't want the home to be left out in that. The home is key. You may have unbelievers that are in the home, but hopefully you have disciple makers that are in the home. And so as they receive their student back, how can they partner with their student and not have a collision, but realize, no, we're doing the same thing here at home. And so let's look at how to partner all of that. But I think spiritual preparation has been key for that, and obviously building prayer into all of that.
Yeah. And just to add on, I think one of the things that we do just in every life group discipleship moment, and what I would encourage every church that goes on mission journeys, like those daily debriefs are huge for life application, like when you're on the field. And so because it's fresh, especially for a student, like there's so much that's garnering their attention. Mm-hmm. So how do you actually consecrate, right, those things that they experience? And so we ask a simple question as we end life groups at the point, as we end debriefs with churches here, knowing what we know now, what do we pray for? And so you're combining of what we experience And not simply like when we have a prayer time, okay, we're going to pray. What can we pray for? And praying for personal life is great. But I think when we engage God's word, there's a truth there that we should be able to take away and say, okay, I'm going to pray that God's character or promise or attribute that I experience in his word, I need to now pray that God reveals that to me in a clearer way, or that I trust that more. So same thing here, is knowing what we know now, what we experience today. Let's pray together like that. This happens when we go home. And so that would be just the quick thing I would add. And the piece of equipping the home that Amy Jo shared is so massive. And again, I do think what happens with a student on a mission journey is a catalytic moment, not just for them, but for their family.
Yeah.
I've heard many a story that student goes home and the eyes of the parents were open because the student was able to articulate what they experienced in such a clear gospel-centered way that the family was just and Grace would tell you, her parents, Lincoln Joellen, this was huge for them, because when she came back from Vancouver after the summer here, she shared, and then it just became more and more oh, wow, we need to actually approach even our life. And so just seeing when we talk about next gen and family ministry, that's truly what it is. These mission journeys are not just for students, they're for the family. Because we can really equip students to be able to have conversations with their parents, and for them to be catalyzed, for them to be spurred on, for them to be inspired. How many students get their parents to start coming to church more faithfully? They're some of the main drivers, right? Yeah. And so if you look at those statistics, and so that would be the one thing I would just say, and just give the students the challenge, saying, hey, we're here for you. If your parents think you just came back from Mars, because they don't understand it all. Yeah. We want to help. And this is where, Evan, you do such an amazing job, as you're equipping students, and you're there to receive their parents when they come back and ask questions. Because I'm sure last summer when you told them, hey, we took students to a Sikh temple, you probably got some questions, right? Because because it was such a unique experience. But when you frame it and when you articulate it in such a way, I truly believe parents are then inspired to engage their life missionally and to have new eyes to see where God is leading them.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite things we get to do, specifically for the trip that's happening right now. It's local.
Right.
So when we have our parent meeting, we get to talk with them about, here's all the sites we're going to. One of the things that we get to share with them is the addresses of these places, and go, hey, when your kid comes back, we want you to ask them, what's one place that really stuck out to you that you would want to go back to? And then go as a family.
That's cool.
These are here in our backyard. Go experience this together. If they love the Kurdish market they got to go to and the cheese bread that they loved, go back as a family and experience that. So if I can kind of synthesize some of this, it sounds like I'm hearing from all of us, again, there's this intentionality and open-handed piece, but there's really 4 groups that we're thinking through when we think of who we as the leaders are serving on these trips. There's obviously the community we're going to, and we're serving those people. There's our leaders who are going with us, and we can't miss it. That's a huge opportunity on these trips, to pull them aside and have some challenging conversations. There's the student. And we have to make sure we're thinking about, how am I investing in this kid, and what are the opportunities in their life this week? And then, of course, there's the parent coming home as well, because there's transformation that can happen on the back end. We've all seen it happen where a kid comes home and does change their family because they were changed on these trips. Especially when we're thinking about students. I know, Mac, you mentioned debrief is one of probably the biggest things. And that was modeled for me by you guys, that's a key piece of what we do on trips. Right. We make sure there's intentional time set aside to let these things really become concrete in students' lives. And that way it doesn't get lost when they go back home. So on our middle school trip right now, just a practical thing, when we finish worship every day, we do debrief groups, and they break into their gender and grade. And then they get to talk about, what did you see God do this day? What did you see here? And so I got to sit with 8th grade guys last night and just talk about what'd you see? And they got to talk about sharing the gospel. And then we got to just turn this question around that I know that they will go home thinking about this. I asked them, why do we share the gospel? And of course, Matthew 28, and because we make disciples and all that. And then we turned it around, and the leader I was with, we said, but why do you share the gospel? Why is it important for you to do it? And then all of a sudden we start getting these answers and they're like, well, I mean, Jesus changed my life and he gave me hope. And I think other people deserve that. And, I don't know, he got me out of this and I know that he can do this for other people. Like those are the moments a teenager is going to remember moving forward.
Yeah.
And if they forget Matthew 28 and they can't recite it, I'd prefer they did know it. But like if they forget, that's fine. But if they remember, this is the why for me.
That's right.
That's really significant. And I think one of the coolest pieces that we get on some of these trips, and this is my next question for you guys, some of these students, we know they're going to be called out. They're on these trips and yeah, they're 13, but the Lord is already stirring in their heart a calling.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, what are some of the stories you guys have? Are there any that stand out to you that you can remember over the years where you go, I watched it happen on this trip, and then I saw them post-trip really start to lean into, God is leading me to do something different. Are there any stories you guys can think of from these trips?
Yeah. I know, I don't know if we can say names or not, but yeah, I mean, there are, it happens in the margins. I always love how we use you use the walks to and from like the L train, or especially on, if we used to do, I think you guys still do, like going to the lake in Chicago, and there's a long walk. And I think at first we're like, this is going to be a long walk. And it is, but it also is a great way to encourage leaders to call Christ out in students. And so when you have leaders that are walking back with students, I've seen time and time again where somebody goes, hey, I saw Christ at work within you today in this way. And we had a student a couple of years ago in Chicago that came to faith in Christ. And I didn't know why she wanted to talk to me, but she was like, she kept on going, can we talk now? And I was like, no, we're at the train. She was like, can we talk now? No. And finally it was like 11:30 at night. And I thought, they're probably going to be in bed. But I felt like the Holy Spirit was like, go talk to her. So I knocked on the door. She's like, finally. And so anyway, she was like, I'm ready to receive Christ. And we walked through. She opened up her Bible and she had all these highlights all over. And I was like, explain this to me. She goes, well, this is where God has been speaking to me. I put green here. And this is where I started, but I didn't finish. So I put red here. And just, it was amazing. And I just became aware in that moment, hey, this is a visual representation of God pursuing you.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I know. I'm ready to receive him now. And so she accepted Christ. And then I said, great, who are you going to tell? And she was like, right now? And I was like, yeah. So she went into the next room and she told the girls in her room and they were like, yeah. And then I go, okay, and then who next? And she was like, I don't want to talk in front of everybody. And then the next day at night, she shared during the debrief time. And then her dad said, she keeps on sharing the gospel wherever we go. Wow. Like it's kind of interrupting things, So she would be one of the people that I saw dramatically make a difference. But I've seen people that have been called to a certain area or a people group, and it's happened on mission journeys. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'll share a story of one of our current team members that just got up here for the summer. He came with one of the regional campuses of Brentwood, and had a bright future when I first met him in 2023. Very musically gifted, and just wanted to work in the music industry in Nashville. And he came up for 2 straight years in 2023 and 2024. And as I was praying through, after having conversations with this young man while he was here in Vancouver, I knew he graduated university. Like I knew that he probably was seeking and pursuing his career. But his name kept on coming to mind after we had all these conversations when he was he's on the ground here in Vancouver. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey man, can we talk? And I was like, I know you're probably like about to go into your career and you're so talented, but I was wondering, just going to call a shot, like, would you be interested, to come up here this summer? And he just goes, I was hoping you were going to reach out to me. Oh. And I'm like, and he said, for some reason, what I know that God has gifted me in, and I love music and I love audio and I love production, but it's not sticking like what I experienced when I was in Vancouver. And he said, I am willing to actually like quit my jobs and come up here to Vancouver to serve with you this summer. And I thought that was like a perfect moment of like, I don't know, like I may think like I'm speaking from my personal experience, like I'm a product of like, I thought I knew what was best for my life.
Yeah.
Like I could have, like, I really did, but like it was that calling to Jesus. It was that calling to the Lord Jesus Christ that transformed, like where I found my most flourishing, when I found my blessing of like when I'm in lockstep with where he is, what he's doing in my life, and I'm allowing him to give me the strength of my steps to go on the path that he's called me to. That's when I found that I'm most fulfilled. And so that story just sticks out to me of just like a person who is brutally honest, even being on the ground here a day. He's just like, yeah, it's really hard being here, but I know this is where God has called me to be. And I'm just like, man, that is the call to die. And that may sound crazy, like to say, but that's the call of Christ, is to put to death what we think is best and pursue what he has for us. And so that's a story that sticks to my mind. And so that's my prayer, is like, not that every student comes to serve in Vancouver, which would be pretty awesome if that was the case. Right. But it's that they would take that mindset of just like, whatever they experience here, it sticks with them to where even as they're pursuing long-term vocational job callings, that they're willing to even forsake those if they know that there's this unsettledness in their spirit because God is calling them to something that much greater. And that's very countercultural, as we all know, in the U.S. But I think it's a biblical one. And we don't do it right. But my goodness, I'm so inspired by this young man who's with us this summer because he's modeling even for me. Like, Mac, you are not just a pastor. Before you're a pastor, you're a son of God, and you're a worker equipped to go to the nations. Like, remember that is so much bigger than how many people come to your church, how many people are involved in discipleship. Like when you're living in there, that's when, like, man, your soul is alive. And so that's just like a quick story. And that's my hope, is like with students that come here, is that it's those simple short-term trips that change the life trajectory. And I'm praying for this young man that God is, and that's one of the ways I'll pray for him, is like in every student that comes, it's like God speaks so clearly to them that they have such a confidence and trust to follow him wherever he calls.
Awesome.
I love that. I think one of the coolest things we get to steward in the roles that we have is those conversations and those journeys with students.
Yeah.
College students, teenagers, leaders, whoever it might be. But those doors start opening as you're talking with them. And then all of a sudden you have this opportunity to speak into this transformation in their lives and this new stage in their lives. I mean, Amy Jo, I think about when I was in college, the summer I went to Vancouver, I was home. I had taken a semester off. I was living at home. I was working at a massage studio and was just leading a small group here at church. And just turned out that the pastor of the Point in Vancouver was here that night for a Wednesday night. And we were standing around talking with him after church. And I think Link was the one who asked me, put me on the spot in front of him and goes, hey, Evan, what are your plans this summer? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I haven't decided yet, Link. And he goes, I think you should go to Vancouver. And I was like, Link, I can't do that. Like, what? This is not the moment for this right now. It's like 9 p.m. on Wednesday. And Victor looks at me, and this makes perfect sense for him now. I thought he was being serious at the moment, but he looks at me and he goes, don't you think God calls and we should go? I was like, that's not fair.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Come on, man.
That's right.
But I went home and I prayed about it. And obviously I ended up going, and that was a huge transformation summer for me. I tell that to say, like, I look forward now in life, and we've had multiple college students or recent college grads who have come to serve in our student ministry since I've been back, who didn't know what their next step was or were starting it and felt really uncertain about it and really uneasy about it. And they would, pop in my office and say, I don't understand why I feel uncomfortable. Like, this doesn't feel right. Why doesn't it? And then we start navigating that and start having these conversations. And both of them, one is now there at the point, and one did go up a few summers ago. And for both of them, stewarding that journey to be able to go, hey, I think this is the Lord stirring.
Yeah.
I think he's asking you to do something different than you've ever thought you needed to do. How can we connect you to an experience that's going to help you work that out?
Yeah.
And I think that's what mission journeys offer, is this opportunity to really work out, what is God doing in my life?
That's right.
And it's one of those beautiful things. I know we've all gotten to see a student really transform over the course of a journey and discover, I think this is what God is asking me to do. And it's that open-handedness we always talk about, really coming out in those moments.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to today's conversation on student missions. Whether you're leading students, supporting missionaries, or casting vision for your church, we hope this episode gave you some practical insight and deeper encouragement for building a missions culture that forms wholehearted disciples. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with your team or someone leading students in your church. And for more missions and leadership resources, visit us at elevatechurchconference.com. We'll see you next time on the Elevate Podcast.